you find it? Did you find it? Maybe you can look on the computers. Great. Fantastic. Today's Thursday, September 9th, and we're kind of starting, it's like Groundhog Day. We're starting over again and again. I promise you, the last time we're going to have new and reviews, new and revised study guide. And there's some improvements. It only includes 3 mods, 1, 2, and 3. So most of the questions you've already answered in another form and another mod. But I'm trying to make things as simple as possible because this thing is the goat rope from the very beginning, and I'm really getting tired of dealing with it. So you have 180 questions. You've got 60 questions for mod 1, 2, and 3, so that's 180 questions. Out of that 180, 50 will be on the test. And I will pick out, hopefully, the best 50 I can get. I didn't discriminate, I just did the first 60. So I'm trying to make it simpler, more streamlined, and easier for you. I did not have time to design the test because I have a class at night on Wednesday night, and I had designed already a test, and we were going through the review, and I was looking through the exam to make sure that I had kind of covered the subjects that were going to be on the exam, and lo and behold, I find the question that I don't recall I put on the test. It's a question I would never use on the test. It was never on any of the study guides. So that's when I realized we got a problem. Houston, we have a problem. No, the handouts are up. Yeah, that's the master copy. Handouts are always on the desk when you first come in. So it'd be nice to create a habit where you're always picking up whatever you see on that front desk. So now you're going to have an exam with 50 questions out of those 180. So today being Thursday, I'll release the test tomorrow, maybe even later tonight. It really don't matter that much. I haven't done it yet, so I don't want to say I'll do it real soon, but I'll do it tonight. You'll have, whenever I release it, which will, like I say, probably be tonight, you'll have all day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to review your new study guides so that you're all good to go. So when you hit the button to start the test, you should be ready. One of the things that will be on the test is a question or two about plasticity, which we have not talked about at all. So I feel obligated to discuss this. It's a great subject. It has huge ramifications for where we're going with psychology as a discipline, as a field, but it also, with the discovery of brain plasticity, it sort of threw in the wind decades, if not centuries, of thought about the brain, how the brain works. So once we learned about brain plasticity, the game changed significantly. Okay, so I would be remiss if we didn't discuss it. I'm going to put the screen down and show you this video. I'm not doing this by error. I did it on purpose. We have such a limited amount of space. Okay, this video is narrated by I assume, probably a PhD student from England or Australia. He's got a heavy English accent. If you like English accents, pretty entertaining. But you remember the famous quote about that England and the United States are very similar, separated by a different language. And there's some truth to that. You hear Englishmen or Australians speak English, and their English is just really, really different than what we speak in the U.S. So he's a little bit hard to understand. He's kind of entertaining. I like him. He does a lot of videos. This one he does a real good job on, so that's why I use it. I might just play some of it, and then he speaks a lot slower than I do, and I don't really have the patience to wait for him to pull out the discussion. So we're going to talk about plasticity. What is brain plasticity? It is the ability, when you think of plastic is malleable. You can kind of bend it, shape it, stretch it. That's what we're talking about with brain plasticity. Before we understood the concept, we just thought when you were born, you have what you have, and that's it. Well, that's not true. Now we know that the process of neurons, growth, dendrites extending and touching other neurons goes on throughout your life. So brain cell growth, which is probably on here. Well, the definition right there says plasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize neural pathways throughout the lifespan, which means your whole life, as a result of experience. Okay? So we go back to our famous, by the way, I brought my own chalk, including colored chalk. Woohoo! So, our famous biopsychosocial, what he's saying is this process of social and psychological is affecting the brain continuously. The brain obviously is the bio side, your whole life. The fact that you're listening to this and hopefully perceiving it, remembering it, at least for a little while, is proof that your brain is still has the capacity to synthesize new information. Okay? In a minute, we'll talk about the next slide, which is a little more definitive. This stage, two types of plasticity. Developmental plasticity, as the word would imply, is already cooked into the recipe. As you grow, things come online in your body that's already pre-programmed to do that. And that's natural. Adaptive is not something that's cooked into the books. It is depending on these two things, social and psychological. So, if you're in a car accident, you have a little brain injury, you've lost some brain tissue. In the past, we would say, sorry, so sad, too bad, you're done. Well, that's not true. We now know through brain plasticity that synaptogenesis, remember synaptogenesis, the growth of synapses, which means reaching out one neuron, reaching out to another neuron, that goes on throughout your life. And if you lost a certain part of your brain function, it is potentially possible that your brain can rearrange its wiring to try to compensate for the loss. For instance, you probably heard a mistruth about blind people. Oh, blind people, man, they can hear like a dog. They're wonderful. Their hearing is so superior to ours because they're blind and they don't use their eyes, so therefore all those baked in the cake neural pathways, which by the way is true. You have these neural pathways in your brain before you are outside of your mother's womb. The pathways are already there. So let's say something horrible happened to you, German or your mother, German measles or something, that affected you and you were blind at birth. Those optical neural pathways that send messages from your eye into your brain, they're still there, but your eyes aren't working. So what do those neural pathways do? Well, they're energetic, they're dynamic, they don't like to do nothing. So in the absence of information coming through the eyes, they will tend to migrate, extending those dendrites to other parts of the brain to get something to do. Okay? So it is not true that people who are blind hear more acutely because of the lack of sight. That is not true. What is true is most of our information that we get in the world is through our eyes. So if your eyes are not functional, you have to rely on your other four senses. And because of that, hearing is next in line. Seeing and then hearing. So it's not that you have super hearing like a dog. It is that because you are blind, you have to rely on input from the world to your ears. If those of us, all of us in here, can see, we can do that, but we don't really pay that much attention to it. So, you're blind, you walk out this is how they figure out what's going on. They go with somebody that is sighted, and they have to remember all the steps and all the directions they took to get to this classroom. So they remember, and if you touch the buttons that are in the elevator, they got little rails, bumps on it to tell you can read braille with your fingers. Did I say read with your fingers? That's another story. Well, let me get back on that one. Okay, you figure out, okay, this is what I do. I get out of the elevator, I turn left, I walk, I take 53 steps, then I take another left, and then I take 61 steps, and then I'm right before left. That's what they do. Okay, so upon leaving, they can remember the same, only backwards. But they do things like, when they get into the main hallway there, they hear, well, we all know, that's the elevator, right? Do we pay much attention to that? Well, maybe if we're talking, we're watching that little light, the sequence lights. So we're having a conversation, ding, okay, that's our number, let's get on the elevator and leave. Somebody who's blind is listening for cues. So they could probably pay more attention to that fan. So if this was a classroom and there was many more, and they were walking down the classroom and they heard that fan and you know this is their classroom, then they could come here or they could hear my voice or whatever. So they rely on their hearing more so it's more important to them. If you're walking in a hallway, any of us walking in the hallway, maybe talking to somebody, maybe not, somebody comes up from behind, it really doesn't bother us. We don't even pay much attention. If we were really concentrating on hearing, we could hear their steps, even if they were live. But since we don't have a need to do that, we don't put much energy into listening behind us when we're walking the hallway. Now, if we've been out having a great time in J-Town, and for whatever stupid reason, we decide to walk through a dark alley, and we hear steps behind us, we're going to pay attention to that, because it's environmental. But in general, we don't pay attention to those kinds of sounds, because it's not very important. Okay, so, long story to tell you that I was waiting for my music to come on. I wanted to listen to it, but it didn't. Still didn't work. All right, I'll figure out this game. You're on. So I guess we're going back to okay, back to Roy. And not Anna. I like a little music in the morning. I like music all the time, actually. I'll figure out a way to play some music. I found out the hard way. If you play music on your Zoom videos, it's called cool. And then when you upload them to YouTube, YouTube won't let you do it because they're copyrighted. Now, however, this is live. So they don't seem to have that filter. So if I played an Ana Gabriel song right now, I think it would let me play it, and then when you replay it, it's going to be there.
It will most likely like shut you down.
It won't let you download it?
It won't let you like if it's a live video on YouTube and you're trying to play some music, like possibly like through halfway through the live it would cut it. It's like YouTube will
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good point. I don't know, but I'm always trying to beat the censor somehow. Maybe I haven't done it yet. So, okay. So that's adaptive brain plasticity. Your brain is adapting to something that it wasn't programmed to do, like because of an accident, an illness, some brain injury. There's all sorts of stories of people who've had accidents and lost the ability to do something and then regained it. My favorite one is a guy, precocious guy, right? Probably ADHD, like some people in this room. He's 5 years old. He's a German guy. 5 years old, and he's building fireworks. Explosive fireworks. He's 5 years old. So he's got dad's black powder on him, pounding it into a tube so he can make a firework. Of course, he's 5 years old. He makes a mistake, and the firework blows up and goes into his face, and he's blind. Very significant. He used to have the ability to see. Then he lost it because of a tragic incident. Okay? Well, since he was a really outgoing kid, he became an outgoing adolescent and adult. And since he was in Germany, he liked to ski. And you say, well, how can you ski when you're blind? Well, what they do, if you've been skiing, they don't do much skiing here, flatlands of Chico Town and surrounding areas. But if you ski down a mountain, there usually is a pathway, that kind of winds around, which is the rut. What they do is they put noisemakers on the left and right side of the pathway. So if you're a blind skier, you get in the middle, okay, I can hear the one on the right, I can hear the one on the left, I'm essentially in the middle, okay, I'm going. All right? So being very, very driven, he didn't just become a normal skier, normal blind skier. He became like a competitive Paralympic type skier where he's going on really, really challenging, what we call black diamond runs. Triple black diamond, really difficult runs for people who are sighted, and of course, equally difficult or more for people who are not sighted. So he's really, really good. And then when he got to be about his late 40s or early 50s, we were making such progress on eye surgeries and understanding neuroplasticity that the doctors said to him, you know what? There's a possibility we can, since your neural pathway is intact, but your eyes were damaged, there's a possibility because of our new ophthalmic advances that we can fix your eyes and connect it back to the neural optic nerve, and we might be able to allow you to see again. So he said, of course, go for it. So they did. And the operation was like 91% successful. So he could see what he would normally be able to see, but for the accident, a little over 90%, which is really good. So he's talking to a group of middle schoolers because he's a motivational speaker as well, right? About how to overcome things. And somebody asked him, somebody smart, asked him, hey, when you ski one of those triple black diamond runs, do you find it easier now to ski those really tough runs with a lot of cuts and a lot of moguls, bumps? And he says, yeah, I do find it more difficult. So when I really get on a triple diamond and there's a lot of things going on, I close my eyes. What? You just finally got your sight back, and now you're telling me when the tough gets going, the tough close their eyes? Answer, yes. Why would he close his eyes when things get really challenging for him? Why? Because he spent the first 49 years of his life, his adult life, wouldn't be 49, but somewhere, it's the beginning of his adult life, whether it's 29 years worth, 30 years worth, he was skiing with essentially his eyes closed because he couldn't see. So his memories and his skill set was very, very well defined for 21 years or whatever it was without having sight. So when he's just normally skiing, he opens his eyes. But when it's really challenging, he closes his eyes, and then he goes back to his muscle memory and all that. So, interesting story, I think, about how memory works and how your synaptogenesis can work. So, all right, let me put this down. We'll listen a little bit to Rory. Just so you can hear his wonderful British accent.
Right. To build emotional pathways in response to new experiences.
That's it? Can you hear that?
So in order to analyze the fact that
Yeah, if I can.
the skill function is only as required in order to represent that view of knowledge. There There are certain types of plasticity. Development of plasticity refers to changes in neural connections as a result of interactions between environments, which are
All right, that's driving me nuts. I can't even hear. Okay. Developmental plasticity versus adaptive. First of all, the definition. Here is the definition. Adaptive brain's ability to compensate for lost functionality due to some kind of medical people, environmental insult, otherwise known as some kind of injury. The classic term for that is environmental insult. Due to brain damage as well as response to interaction with the environment by reorganizing its structure. So the optic nerve pathway, the neural pathway in the blind person is bored, so it reaches out and touches some other neuron so they can do something, which might include assisting hearing, but it can also assist other areas. So here are the normal 4 processes that involve neural growth. Synaptogenesis. Well, you know what genesis means because you understand the Latin language, especially those Spanish speakers. And synaptogenesis means growth, as in the Bible, the first book in the Bible, Genesis. Synaptogenesis is growth. Likewise, you have synaptic pruning. Everybody knows what the word pruning means. That means cutting things off. Well, why would you do that? Well, if you grew rose bushes and you want the most beautiful roses, full, blooming, you can't let the rose bush just grow the way the rose bush wants to grow because it comes too entangled, too many extensions, too many, and you cut off the capacity to grow beautiful roses. In our area here, we have pecan trees. Every year, pecan tree growers and caretakers go out and trim the pecan trees. Why? The same reason. They don't want the branches all twisted into each other, and therefore the pecans can't grow in number. So they prune them, which means they cut them off, which actually helps the plant or tree or brain. Neural migration. Migration, you understand that? That's a good Latin word. In Spanish, it's exactly the same. Pronounced a little differently. Migration is movement. So it is natural for things to move around in your brain. I'm sure I said this. If not, sorry, I'll say it now. If you're in this room under 29, virtually everybody is, your brain is still got parts in it that are migrating around, especially here in the prefrontal cortex. This is your higher order thinking, your executive function. And after 28 or 29, it slows down. Does it stop? No, because this goes on throughout your life. And synaptic pruning goes on your entire life, but not at the rate as it does in the beginning. And I'll show you a slide in a minute. And then there's the famous myelinization. What's myelinization? I drew that one on the board. Everybody remember that? We had a neuron. Of course, I don't have much board. We had a neuron, which I drew with the little dendrites coming out, soma, axon terminal, like that, right? And then I drew, or you looked at, something like this. called myelin. Myelin sheath. Myelin sheath. This is a myelinated neuron. Why do neurons become myelinated? When that electrical charge comes through the dendrites into the cell body or soma, if it's strong enough to pass the threshold of the action potential, then it shoots that electric charge down the axon, comes down to the very end, the terminal bud, looks for a vesicle, and then tells the vesicle, hey dude, out of here. Lump a neurotransmitter out and put it in the synaptic gap, the synaptic cleft. The advantage of myelinated axons is when the electric charge, it doesn't go straight down the axon, it jumps. And that jump makes it even quicker. So any sensory neurons, neural pathways, like you have hundreds of them, millions, well, I don't know millions, but you have thousands of them for sure on your face, because your face has got your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears. That's 4 of your 5 senses. So your face is really, really important. So the neural pathways from your sensory receptors on your face, you have thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and they're all myelinated. Why? Because you can't afford when you're running around Saturday night somewhere where there's woods, you have to go somewhere, I guess, you can't do it here. Run through the woods at night naked, which you might be prone to do. You can't run the risk of going through a forest with sharp branches, and that sharp branch getting close to your eye, and you keep moving, and then the sharp branch goes into your eye, impales it, and then you lost sight. You can't afford that. So all of your sensory perception neural pathways on your face, you have bunches of them on your hands, you have bunches of them on your sexual organs, because you can't afford a stab in any of those critical parts of your body. It would be disastrous if it happened anywhere around your face, punctured your eardrum, popped an eye, messed up your nose, you couldn't breathe, somehow messed up with your mouth. And as far as your sexual organs go, you poke that and ruin it. Then you can't produce children, and then you're a waste to your race and culture because you can't reproduce. So these 4 things up here are naturally occurring. The traumatic result of some kind of injury results in rerouting and sprouting, which is in essence a combination of neural migration and synaptogenesis. Okay, Roy, let's move on.
They're consequence of developmental processes.
All right, we're too slow, Rory.
Of synaptogenesis, aka reflex.
There's your definition. This will be on Blackboard. Synaptogenesis, the rapid expansion in synaptic formation in order to deal with the bombardment of sensory input. Just like happening right now on live synaptic genesis. You're listening, you're taking notes, and hopefully you're learning something. That is synaptic genesis. Synaptic pruning, of course, is cutting away. Why would you want to cut away? All right? Those of you who grew up in in a house that speaks Spanish, you know that when little babies and mom or grandma, abuela, madre, somebody's taking care of this kid, you don't say to a 2-month-old kid, "Hey, Junior, ¿qué quieres por comer?" That doesn't work, right? So what everybody says is to the kid, "¿Quieres papas? Sí, ¿quieres papas?" You're laughing because you know it's true. Well, what's papas? That's potatoes. So you say to your kid, "Do you want to eat potatoes?" Of course, that's not really what you mean. You just mean, "Do you want to eat?" But they don't understand a lot of words, so just pick one and use it. ¿Quieres agua? ¿Quieres leche? ¿Quieres cerveza? No. Okay. So you have a neural pathway that says, "Papas." That means, am I hungry? Do I want to eat? True. But as you grow older, you discriminate. So you don't say to a 2-year-old kid, "¿Quieres papas?" No, you don't. You say, "¿Quieres frijoles? ¿Quieres un tortilla?" Whatever. And those are neural pathways. Because you need, as a Spanish-speaking child or an English-speaking child or whatever language you're speaking, to know that when you're talking about food, you're not talking about a chair. You want to eat a chair? What? I said, "Do you want to eat a chair?" What are you talking about? So you have to discriminate what your words are. So the old the old neural pathway of "Quieres papas," you don't need it anymore because it's not functional. So you prune it. And think of all the words that we use. Kids' first animals generally that they learn the names of animals are household pets, like a dog or a cat, right? So if you have a young kid who doesn't know anything about animals except a dog and a cat, and they're looking out the window and there's a horse. And what do they say? "Dog! Dog!" Because it looks as close to that horse as anything they've ever seen. As they grow older, of course, they know the difference between a dog and a horse. So cut that neural pathway out, make 2 that says, this is a horse, this is a dog. So you've got synaptogenesis going on, and you've got synaptic pruning going on. Synaptic pruning is determined by experience. Connections not used are pruned. Use them or lose them. The brain is an efficient, effective organ. If you have an old neural pathway that says, when mom says papas, she means food, you don't use that, it's going to get pruned. So, what does the wise abuela tell you about your little infant in the crib, waving around, looking up? What does grandma say to you? If they're smart, they usually are pretty smart. They tell you, as new parents, put all sorts of things in that crib or near the crib. Get a mobile. Put it on one of those arms and stick it over the crib. So when the kid's laying there going, they can see the mobile. It moves. It's got music. It's got color. It's got shapes. What is that doing? When that kid is staring at that mobile, he's looking at circles, squares, triangles. He's looking at yellow, green, orange, blue. All those things are important neural pathways that he or she is going to develop when they start talking about color and shapes. So start them early. People will tell you, and they are correct, take that child, infant, 8 months old, take him to a concert. Donna Gabrielle's coming into town, take him down to the Coliseum or the Haskins Center. And don't just introduce him to Norteña music, even though it's the best Mexican music. Play other things for them. And then not just Spanish music. You can play all sorts of genres. You can take a 2-year-old to the Children's Museum and let them do some of that touch and see, and take them into an art museum. Are they going to remember the difference between an impressionist painting and a modernistic painter? No. But you're exposing them to it, and potentially you are creating the beginnings of neural pathways that they could use in the future. And when they're like 4 years old, you just stop doing that stuff. Although obviously they don't have a mobile in their crib, they're not sleeping in a crib. So you introduce new things to your children as they grow up. Now here's the one that Abuela didn't tell you, but should have told you. When the kid gets to be 10 or 11, all those, not all, but many of the things that you did when the kid was below 2 years old, you need to do it again. Why? Because in that early adolescence, you really are cleaning house as far as synaptic pruning is. So, like with my children, I asked them if they wanted to go to music lessons, learn how to play the piano and play the guitar. Both of them said yes. Both of them did not follow through. But they were exposed to it. My son actually still has a guitar. I don't think my daughter does anything music-wise, but my daughter's also an accomplished artist, even though she's a pre-med student. Okay? Because 10, 11, 12, just before secondary sex characteristics are kicking in on puberty, the body goes through some pretty serious pruning. And as I said, that continues until you're about 28 and 29, and it's pretty much done, except for the normal pruning and synaptogenesis that's associated with developmental. Okay?
Right, so it refers to the rapid expansion in synaptic formation in order for the brain to do bombardment sensory.
Just 2 or 3 minutes.
Development.
That's
Finish to the grade of
not that far.
It's not therefore
Not
and
that
there was
far. Not that far. Okay.
feasible.
All right. If I can get this thing moved slow enough for me, I'm going to show you 3 panels of what your neural pathways may look like if we went into your brain at a certain age, cut a little piece out, and made a slide of it. So let me run this thing
As
up
we
for about
develop.
15 seconds here. There it is. Okay, developmental plasticity. This is normal. So this is one age, this is a different age, and this is a different age. Based on your extensive knowledge of brain neurology, How old do you think this person is?
40 to 50. 40 to 50.
40 to 50? You said older? Anybody else? And you're saying that because those of us who are over 50 can't even get a steady diagnosis. Can't figure out what's going on in their brain? What do you say? Voice is coming over here. What do you think it is?
10 years old.
10 years old. Well, you're right in the sense that it's younger. This is like 10 days old. Why? Because you don't know much. As soon as you're out of the womb, even before you get out of the womb, you understand your mother's voice. You can pick out your mother's voice out of all voices in the world. You know your mother's voice. And why is that? Because you've been carried around for 9 months while your mom's talking. You know her voice. And you might know a few other things. If mom is playing music, a little thing music, bandas, whatever. You might know a few things. You can't see in the womb. You can hear. You sort of have some rudimentary taste, but not well defined. Touch, not well defined. What else are we using? Sight, hearing is there. Touch, taste, smell. Okay, so really the only thing that these are probably mostly hearing stuff. Because the only thing you can see is black. So that's nothing. All right, this is 0 to maybe a couple years old. What do you think this is?
Middle age.
Middle age?
Yeah, middle age.
Like, what do you mean middle age? Like middle age
Like
adult or middle age
middle age
kids?
adult.
Okay?
Adult.
Anybody else has another idea?
Teenager. A teenager.
Teenager. Close. Close. This is 3 years old. Why 3 years old? Because you're that freaking sponge. You are just sucking up everything. Which is why Grandma tells you, expose them to all these things, because they're just a sponge. They're just eating it all up. And then one of you said adolescence. There's adolescence, 15 years old. Why is that? Why is this 3 and this is 15? Because see this line right here? This is papas equals food. And as you notice, it's not over here because it's been proven. So all this stuff you learn, like every 4-legged animal that doesn't look like a cat is a dog. Well, that one's right here, and you can see it's not over here. Now you would think, well, why wouldn't you have more connections? Because now you know the difference between a horse, a pig, a cow, and a dog. Well, you got a lot of crap in the system that you don't need, and so you prune it out. Here at age 15, you're a lean, mean fighting machine, and this is the way you go through life. You are much more efficient. And Rory will tell us that this is true.
So in summary, let's have a look at volume of synaptic connections for newborn. This is a 3-year-old. This is a adolescent 15-year-old. So from birth up to 3, we have synaptogenesis, and then we have synaptic pruning, which I'll do through adolescence.
Okay. But, as you already know, this goes on throughout your life. The reason we're significantly pointing this to this to this is because here you don't got much to work with, here you got too much to work with, and then over here you're more in the streamlines, more efficient. So that's how normal developmental brain plasticity works. By the way, there used to be a question on the study guide that went like this. If you were to have a brain injury, when's the best time to have it? The answer, 0 to 3. Have it sometime when you're young. Because you've got so much going on, so much pruning, so much addition. If you get injured when you're 3 years old, you can compensate for that much better than when you're 15 or 30. So, we do not want you to have a brain injury, but if you were to have it, the best time to have it is as a child. All right. So, now we have the final version of study guide. So, as I say, some instructors give you sample practice tests before you take the big one. In this class, at least this round, we're going to do sample study guides until we get one that's going to be the final one. Now, this one is the final one, and I didn't have time to create the test, so the time that we have left, because we're not going to meet again this week, let's go through here page by page and see if there's something on there that you don't remember reading. You have no idea what the answer is. And we will, the new handouts are on the front desk there if you missed it. Okay, let's look at page 1. Look at number 6. One of psychology's early mottos was the rat is always right. Which aspect of the scientific attitude did this represent? Humility, respect for animals, curiosity, or skepticism? The answer, A, humility. If the rat's going to run the maze and you think it's going to do this, you're wrong, the rat is right, so humble yourself. The rat is always right. If you want to know this cognitive experiment that you're conducting, whether you're right or the rat's right, the answer is the rat's right. So you think the rat's going to do this, the rat doesn't do that. So, then we talk, did I use an example of face blindness in here? Seems to me I said, did I talk about face blindness? Well, let me review that little side story. Face blindness is some people cannot recognize faces, including their own. There's nothing wrong with their sight, there's nothing wrong with their memory, they're not mentally, intellectually deficient. There is just something wrong with their brain functioning that they cannot recognize a face, including their own. So, the wonderful researchers in neuroscience decided there's a portion of the visual cortex, which happens to be on the left-hand side of your brain. There's a portion there that we know through functional MRIs, fMRIs, that is the area of the brain that fires up when you show somebody a face. Because even those little infants that are sitting there looking at that mobile, they are predetermined to pay attention to people's faces. How do you know that's true? Because everybody in the world, the kids in their stroller, and you're pushing them, and everybody sticks a face in there. Ooh, get you out! Etc., etc. Okay? That's great. That's great. Until they get around 1 year's of age. Then what happens? You're at the grocery store, somebody wants to see your kids, so you let them do that. They stick their face in there, and the kid goes crazy, wailing, scare the crap out of them, right? And They used to enjoy that. Now they don't enjoy it anymore. Why? It's a strange face. The people who live in their life and they see frequently, they have a memory of that. When they see a face that they don't recognize, it scares them and they start crying. That's a fact. Any of you who've been around kids, maybe you have your own kids, you know that they're great with others, complete strangers, and then there comes a time when they do nothing but wail. So, that's a developmental thing, and that's an example of developmental plasticity. They have now learned who the immediate members of their family or extended family that they know. Then eventually they get over it, and it's okay. But they do like faces. So in this experiment, we knew where that area of the brain is. So the doc takes one of these prosopagnosia person, which is face blindness, puts them in the MRI, runs a functional MRI, which means while they're in the MRI, they're looking at pictures. Bing, bang, 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 all right? So the researcher says to herself, I'm going to see a problem in their portion of their visual cortex that deals with facial recognition, because obviously that's a problem. So what did she find out? That portion of their visual cortex works perfectly. Lights up just like you or our brain. So then you sit back. And Leslie Stahl says to her, wow, you must have felt like a real failure. And she said, no, because it tells me where it's not. We smart neuroscientists thought, we got it located, and they're right. That is where the visual portion of the visual cortex with facial recognition is. But people who have prosopagnosia don't seem to have a malfunctioning one, even though they can't see. What is it? Back to the drawing board. The rat is right. The human being with that part of the brain that seems to be functioning is correct. You, the scientific researcher, are wrong. So suck it up. Realize with humility, your rational thought is not going to jive with what life really gives you. 3 key attitudes of the scientific inquiry. Did we have that on a prior study guide? One of your 16 prior study guides, number 7. Remember reading that one and answering it? D? Yes. All right, anything else on that page? Oh, by the way, let's look at number 10. There are definitely going to be some critical thinking questions on the test. Somehow that stuff I gave you to round 1 didn't have much about critical thinking. So when you see the critical thinking questions, and obviously number 10 is one of them, they're all together, number 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. So, what is that? Like 8 questions on critical thinking. So, are you going to have a couple critical thinking questions on the exam? Absolutely. There's probably 2 of those 8. If I get real for it, maybe 3. I'm not going to ask you about Aristotle and Plato and any of those on the exam. 21, who developed the first psychological laboratory? Who was that? Wundt. Wilhelm Wundt, the physiologist, studying lowering your hand and you heard the noise or whatever, right? That's 21. 21 is A. 22, you did have on a prior study guide because Wilhelm Wundt started involving experiments involving the mental processes. And that was the beginning of psychological laboratory work. By the way, 23, which is a Wilhelm Wundt question, is scientific methods. So, scientific methods, pure traditional science as opposed to Freudian anecdotal experience, started with the physiologist turned future psychologist. Nothing about Titchener, William James, I don't care. 32, I don't care. 33, I don't care. None of these are on the test. 34, I don't care. 35, I don't care. Just put an X to them. They're not going to be on the test, because I don't learn what's up. You can put them on a study guide because I don't care about it. 36, nope. 37, nope. 38, nope. 39, nope. 40 is a stupid question. I wouldn't put that on there. Okay, that whole page is throw away. I'm not going to put that on there. That's one. Yeah, why not? No, that's not going to be on there. Okay. 41. That's possibly a good test question because it talks about physiology and the mental process. All right, now there's another good test question. 42. John Watson, who is he associated with? Behavioralism. B.F. Skinner, John Watson. So the answer is behavioralism. Of course, that's not down there. So the answer is D, observable behavior. 43 is a behavioralism question. 44, behavioral question. 45, behavioralism. 46 is behavioralism. 47, behavioralism. 48, behavioralism. 49. And that's the end of it. That's the end of all behavioralist questions. So that's either going to be B.F. Skinner, which I don't think any of them mentioned him, Watson, and behavioralism. There'll be certainly a couple questions on that, right? Until we get to 50, which is now talking about Freud. So, Freud, you don't see his name on 50, but you do see his theory, which is psychoanalytical psychology. So 50 is B. And there definitely are going to be some Freud type questions on the exam. 51 is Freud. Those two, I think there's some more Freud ones, but those two, now we're on to 52, which is Rogers and Maslow, who are not Freudians, but humanistic psychologists. So the answer to that is humanism, humanistic psychology, which is the same for 53. 54, during the time of humanism, but specifically mental processes, you're talking about cognition. So 54 is a cognitive psychology question. Obviously 55 is cognitive. 56 is the definition of cognitive psychology. 57, cognitive neuroscience. 58, investigating patterns of brain activity that accompany people's recollection of a stressful experience would be the most interesting, especially known as cognitive neuroscience. In 1959, the branch of psychology that can be considered a marriage between the science of the mind and the science of the brain is called basically psychology, but that's not one of our answers. So the best answer to 59 is C, neuroscience. 60, contemporary psychology, which should have been the answer to 59, is best defined as the science of what? That's the definition of psychology today. What is it on 60?
See.
C, behavior and mental processing. Okay? So that's the end of one. One, two. Not me. Oh, I'm two's out of order. Never mind. Okay. One, two. This is all about hindsight, bias, and issues. The very first question should be Mark meets briefly with applicants. Is that what you got? Better be. Really mad if it's not. Okay. So, one is pretty simple. Intuition. He's not using anything that just gut covered. What is that called? Intuition. Now, let's talk about hindsight bias, which is a really good test question because it defines hindsight bias. Very high likelihood you'll see that one on the test. Hindsight bias refers to people's tendency to do what? C, exaggerate their ability to have foreseen an outcome. First day of class, we're all in here with our mask on and doing our little alleged 6-foot distancing. And I said, soon we're going to do away with this mask routine, and I don't know whether we'll do away with the spacing or not. I don't know. So, if they do that, and I didn't expect it, and I took credit for expecting it, that would be hindsight bias. Hindsight meaning looking backwards. When you say, oh, I knew that. President Sarata of our university, or our college, I knew he was going to leave. He's heading for bigger pasture, bigger school, more responsibility, because he's very confident. He's doing a great job in EPCC. So I'm predicting he's going to go to a bigger school. Okay? Now, if I turn out right, good for me. But if I had no idea and said, no, he'll never leave. He wants to build this campus and do all this stuff and see all the construction. And then he leaves, then I'm going to say, oh, I knew he was going to leave. No, you didn't. You said he wasn't going to leave. So hindsight bias is what screws up a lot of things. Because when you're doing research, you think you know the answer. Like the portion of the brain that works on face recognition. I know that when you put those prosopagnosia people in a functional MRI, that part of the brain is going to be messed up. And you would be wrong, which is another one of the questions here that has to do with overconfidence. So one of the things you have to be, if you are a researcher, is you have to be humble. You have to show some humility. Number 3 is a hindsight bias type question. 4 is, 5 is, 6 is, 7 is, that looks like hopefully all of the hindsight bias questions. Number 8 is just what I said, a sense of humility regarding the accuracy of your intuition is most likely to be undermined by hindsight bias. Go back to hindsight bias. Whatever. 9, formulating testable predictions before conducting research is most directly useful for restraining a thinking error known as hindsight bias. Now we're back to hindsight bias question. Our tendency to believe we know more than we do is called overconfidence in Zen. So maybe we're done. No? Which of the following is most likely to inhibit critical thinking? It's either going to be hindsight bias or overconfidence. I'm going to go with hindsight bias. 12. That's easy. Overconfidence. Intuition question. By the way, we're getting into this probability and all that stuff, like in 14, not a test question. 15, not a test question. 16, not a test question. 17. Well, 17 is a post-truth question, but kind of stupid. I wouldn't put it on the test. So 18, I don't care. I'm not asking any questions about misinformation. 20, 21. This whole group of questions I'm not going to talk about. 22, 23, 24. All right, now we go to 25. 25 is a good test question. Why? Because it is saying Dr. Tate is curious, humble, and skeptical. Those are great attributes for somebody who has a scientific attitude. So that's a good test question 8. 26 is a good question. 27 is a good question. '28's okay. 29 is a good question. 30 is definitely a good question because it's a definition. I don't really like these doctors or somebody brothers doing what they're doing. So those two, 31 and 32, I'm not going to see that on the exam. Statement, describing the exact procedure. Okay, 33 is a good test question. Is out, 35 is out, 36 is out, 37 is a good test question. 38 is a good test question. 39 is out. 40, I'll kick that one out too. Forty-one, I'll kick that out, because that's kind of deeper than I want to go. 42 is a good test question because it defines meta-analysis, and that's a good thing for you to know. Forty-three meta-analysis question, so that would be good for the test. Uh, 44 is a meta-analysis question as well, so that's good. Case study question 46 is good for you to know what a case study is. 47 is a case study one. 48, forget that one. 49 is a good question. Kick out 50. 51 is fine. 52 is fine. 53 is fine. 54 is fine. These are all research, natural observation kinds of questions. Kind of questions, so we'll keep that one. Six is volume facilitates more exact descriptions of automotive behaviors without explaining. Would be naturalistic observation. That's okay. It's not that great of a message. Um, 57 is a natural observation question. That's okay. 58, that's a good question. I think we'll be talking about surveys. 59 is a survey question. 60 is a survey question. They're all fine. They're fairly simple. All right. Near the end. I don't care about Hippocratic. Nice guy. Not going to talk about chronology, which is 2, 3, 4, 5. None of those will be on the test. A study that links biology and behavior would be called biological psychology. That's a fair question. Neuroplastic deficiencies in mood. That's a biological. 7 is a biological psychology question. 8 is biological psychology. Number 9, forget that one. Number 10, we just talked about plasticity today. So that's why I had to go over it, because there's going to be a bunch of plasticity questions on the test. So they include the possibility of 10, 11, 12, 13, let's throw that out, because we're not gonna talk about echolocation. 14, definitely, 15, definitely, 16, definitely, 17, definitely, 18, definitely, 19, definitely, 20, definitely, 21, definitely, 22, yes, 23, yes. Now, 24, we really didn't talk about degeneration of myelin, but the answer is B, multiple sclerosis, multiple sclerosis, 24. So now that you know the answer to that, that makes it a potential test question. Now that we answer that, we can answer 25, which of course is degradation of the myelin sheath. Neurons, number 26, glial cells, 27, good. 28, good. 29, action potential, yes. Number 30, no. 31, yes. 32 is okay. 33, just remember, these are all ions moving. Number 32, neurons generate electricity from a chemical process involving the chain exchange of ions. So 32 and 33 are ion type questions. 34, we'll kick that one out. 35, we'll kick that one out. 37, we'll kick out. 38, we'll kick out. 39, we'll kick out. 40, we'll kick out. 41, we'll kick out. 42 is not there. 43, we'll kick out. 44, kick out. 45, we'll kick out. 46 is a good test question. 47 is a good test question. 49 will kick out. 50 is a good question. Remember, that's the pat on the back one, where the light is either on or off. So 40 is the all or nothing response. The light's all the way on, or it's all the way off. So that's okay. 51. Same thing, all or none response. So that's good. There's a slap on the back. 52. Forget 53. 54, definitely test question. 55, test question. 56, we explained how the electric signal turns into a chemical message. That's a good test question. 57 is a good test question. 58 is a good test question. 59, good test question. And 60 is a good test question. So there better be 50 of those that are good test questions. Otherwise, you're going to get bad test questions. All right? I didn't mark those, so, but I know what I like and what I don't like. So that's where your 50 questions will come from. I'll release, as I said, I'll release the test probably later tonight. We'll have all day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to make sure your study guide's up to date and then do a smashingly good job on the exam. Then I will carefully look at your study guides. In fact, what I'm planning to do is just do them over, so we don't have this recurring problem of stuff not the green one itself. All right, we're about to shut this off, so those of you at home, enjoy your weekend.